tuned into Quick Charge, the high voltage podcast bringing you the top stories in electric vehicles and sustainable energy daily. And it's all powered by electric. Hi, and welcome to another thrilling episode of Quick Charge, the daily EV news show powered by electric. I'm your host, Joe Boris, and we're not going to be covering the latest EV news today because I am on vacation. That's right, kids. By now, I'm fat, happy, and hopefully a few shades more tan after sitting on the beach for a couple of days. But that's not why you're here. You're here to find out why diesel demand is hitting a 26-year low as EVs and hydrogen sales boom. Now, we've talked about a couple of factors that have been driving down diesel prices over the last few days. Not only big electric trucks, but big electric heavy equipment, and of course, EV sales throughout Europe, China, and growing EV sales in the United States. But one thing that definitely isn't driving down diesel demand in a big way is restomods. Restomods, obviously vehicles that have been restored and modified with electric drivetrains. These are usually classic cars like this Tesla Model 3 based Mercedes SL replica that Fred wrote about a couple of days ago. But these can take many, many forms. Now, some of them work, some of them don't. And I'm highlighting this Mercedes as one that's proven to be very popular, but in my opinion, doesn't quite work. It's not quite retro enough to satisfy my love for classic cars. It's not quite modern enough to make me think of what clever engineering is happening in there. And frankly, I hate the Tesla interior, way too minimalist and modernistic for me. But hey, everybody's different. Everyone has their opinions. And we heard a lot of those opinions in the comments about this one. But there's still so many more of these that I think it's worth highlighting how much fun restomods can be. And one of the earliest ones that I covered here in Electric was a mini recharge muscles in on the restomod racket. Now, this was the launch of a segment that we called Current Classics. We don't do a ton of these, but it's all about classic cars that have been converted to electric and that are better for it. Thanks to a passionate team of enthusiasts at the Mini plant in Oxford, Sustainable Driving Fun is now available in a classic car body with factory backing. The Mini Recharge program stuffs an original Mini with pioneering technology from the spirit of a more circular economy. And BMW, to their credit, absolutely gets what Mini, and especially an electric Mini, is all about. If Alex Isagonis could design the classic Mini again today, reads the BMW press release, the iconic small car would have an electric motor. And I think that they're right about that. When the Mini originally launched in 1959, Europe was in the middle of an oil crisis, and it was based from the very beginning on the idea of taking 4 occupants and a little bit of luggage in the smallest possible footprint and using the least amount of fuel. And you can't get less than 0, right? And this one obviously uses no fuel. The idea for the Mini Recharge was born in 2018 and presented at the New York Auto Show, even before Mini began selling an electric version of its Cooper SE. The reactions were so positive that a dedicated team from Mini Oxford set to work and developed a plan to make a factory-backed EV conversion and offer it to customers who own or would like to own a classic Mini. Quote, "What the project team are developing preserves the character of the classic Mini and enables its fans to enjoy all-electric performance. With Mini Recharge, we are connecting the past with the future of the brand." That was from Bert Korber, head of the BMW Mini brand. At least he was back in 2022 when this project was launched. Now, I said this when we were looking at the 300 SL, that car wasn't true enough to the idea of a classic to get me excited. Now, obviously, everybody's different. Everyone's going to have their own different threshold of what should be preserved and what should not be preserved on these vehicles. But look at the choices that this Mini team has made. Underneath that classic old school gas cap is the EV charge port, and they've put it in there very beautifully. Green light, it's going. Red light, it's not going. Perfect. They've replaced that Mini logo, that Mini script, with the same yellow plug logo. You can see that in the upper left there that you see in the current Mini Cooper. And then right around my head here, you can see that the fuel gauge has been replaced with a range gauge up to 100 miles. You've got a couple of modern touches here, but everything is very, very true to the original. They didn't do LED lights. They didn't put giant wheels on it, although they do have the 13-inch Enkis, which look absolutely massive on the Mini. They look perfect to me, to my eye as an elder Gen Xer kind of dude, right? These are the cars that I like, that I grew up lusting after. So I'm excited to see this, but it's not the only kind of car like this out there. Another early article covered this Subaru Brat. Now, the Brat was always an acquired taste, even when it was new. If you were ever lucky enough to be strapped into the rear-facing seats of this pickup bed, either it meant that your parents didn't love you or just safety wasn't a thing in the 80s. I don't know what to tell you. But if that was you and you enjoyed that and you love doing that, this electrified 80s Brat is going to bring back a lot of nostalgia. This was built by the guys at Flash Drive. They've done a couple of different vehicles since then. I got a chance to meet them at Electrify Expo a few years ago when we first started doing the resto mod category. And they are really cool guys who really understand the kind of vintage aesthetic that you need to adhere to on some builds like this. So they understood the Brat name signifies bi-drive, all-terrain. They knew two-wheel drive wasn't an option. So they used a Hyper 9 electric motor, mounted it to the original transmission. They kept the original CV joints. So it drives very similarly to the original Brat. It has the same kind of Subaru all-wheel drive that the brand is known for, but obviously a lot more torque than the original factory motor and just a ton of fun to drive. And if you look at the pictures of this thing, they really did a great job keeping it period correct. There's very little on the outside of this vehicle that signifies that it's electric, except for that badge that you can see above on the upper right corner, EV electric drive. They've kept the gas cap fully functional. That's where you plug it in to charge. And the thing just absolutely looks great. Fresh out of Subaru's 1980 catalog. I couldn't say enough positive things about this and about these guys, frankly. They're doing a ton of work now. They're working on a DeLorean, which we'll get to in a minute. And just super, super guys. Definitely going to have them on the show soon. Now, so far, we've looked at two different classic vehicles that have been restored in different ways, but they've been vehicles on the lower end of the market. You can find a Subaru Brat out there reasonably priced. There's still some barn find Mini Coopers out there that you can pick up and in some kind of reasonable amount of money and get these things converted. But the classic car game can be kind of a fickle mistress, right? Cars that used to sell for $3,000 or $4,000 now selling for 10 or 20 times that. And one of those is the Porsche 911T. Now, we actually have a very similar 1971 Porsche 911T in our family. And that car, I was there when it was purchased in 1992, was bought for about $3,000, which is absolutely bananas now because it's a clean 911T. And those are worth a ton more if you can even find them in decent condition. And these guys are not only finding them and restoring them to beautiful condition, but Voiture Extravert, I hope I'm saying that correctly, they promise to make it better, faster, and stronger than the original. Those are their words, by converting it to electric drive. They have done a complete overhaul of these cars, a full restoration. There's new wood trim, there's new bezels, new gauges. There's this clever arm that connects underneath the dashboard for your phone, but it's still in keeping with that classic Porsche aesthetic. And then where the original radio display was, there seems to be a fully functional touchscreen display that handles things like climate, volume, and turns on and off the phone, you know, when you have Bluetooth operation and the thing's still in your pocket. So I think this is a really clever evolution of an air-cooled Porsche. I think it's much more true to the original idea of what a Porsche used to be than the Taycan. Although that said, if your idea of a Porsche is a 996 or 997 and newer water-cooled Porsche, this is all going to seem like ancient, antiquated stuff to you. But hey, like I said before, I'm old, get over it. Now, we talked about that Porsche being a car that a couple of years ago, well, let's be honest now, 30 years ago, you could get for a song. A Bronco is something similar. These cars back in the 90s and early 2000s, a vintage Bronco was selling for next to nothing. And now a restored one is over $100,000. Well, a company called Zero Labs, run by a guy named Adam Rowe, has been manufacturing electric glider chassis now for a couple of years. And the idea is that you find an old rusty truck or some other type of body on frame vehicle from that era, and you can very quickly convert it to electric drive within about 24 hours. Scooter Doll did this great article back in April of 2021 where there's a video, and I'll put that video in the show notes, that follows along as Adam converts that Bronco to electric drive and does it in just 24 hours. Now, that video talks about climate catastrophes and explains that current automakers going electric over the next decade is not enough. Zero Labs accurately points out that there are 20 times more vehicles on the road today than all electric vehicles ever made. That was in 2021, but it's still pretty close. Maybe it's like 17 times more now. And being able to bridge that gap between the two worlds is crucial to truly reaching zero emissions. Now, I'm not sure I agree with that. I don't think the answer is to create thousands and thousands and thousands of destandardized, impossible to find, unobtainium produced vehicles that just can't be maintained. Zero's doing it a different way. They're creating a standardized chassis, a standardized frame that multiple bodies can be put on, whether it's a Ford F-150, whether it's an old Toyota Land Cruiser, whether it's even, some old Jaguars, anything that was a body on frame type of construction could easily be converted to EVs. And that's the point he's trying to make. Now, as much as I am a critic of these ideas of widespread electrical conversion, the one way it could work is the way that Adam is doing it here with the Zero Labs chassis. But it's worth noting that this is not Zero Labs' primary product. The main product, their main claim to fame, is still a Bronco, and it's still an electric Bronco, but it is a fully restored, transformed Zero Labs electric Bronco. They've sold a couple of these now, and they are, to my eye, absolutely perfect. If JoJo hits the lottery, you are going to know immediately, because one of these will show up in my driveway. Another one will show up in my garage in a different color. My daughter will have one. Probably my wife will have 2 or 3. These things are just going to run rampant throughout the entire neighborhood, and you will see them everywhere. This, to me, is one of the ideal blends of modern and retro when it comes to EV. You've got e-ink touchscreen display there in the center console. You've got just the right blend of modern, futuristic, and retro in terms of the analog speedometer. Everything about this car is just gorgeous, and it's probably my favorite resto mod out there. But don't get discouraged if you and I have different tastes. There are a ton of other resto mods out there, including this Range Rover Safari that swaps out the 3.9 liter Buick V8 for another EV motor. There's Electrogenic. We talked about the DeLorean a little while ago. Scooter just covered this car a couple of weeks ago. This is a fantastic take on the classic DeLorean, which was a beautiful car, but always let down by that trash Renault drivetrain. So converting it to EV makes a ton of sense for those DeLorean enthusiasts that are out there. This was one of the early cars that we covered. It was a 72 Plymouth Satellite that is packing heat from a Tesla Model S Ludicrous Edition. This is a ridiculously fast Plymouth Satellite Mopar car that is every bit as powerful as the old 426s and 440s. This is a monster of a car. This was another vehicle that I got to see when I was doing Electrify Expo in person. It just defies expectations and defies understanding of what people can do with a classic car and modern power. Now, a lot of the cars that I've shown you are huge, high dollar bills. This one has thousands of hours of labor in it. On the other end of the spectrum, Micah, about this time last year, covered a $2,000 kit from China that will convert a classic VW Beetle to electric. And for those of you that know anything about VW Beetles, if it fits a Beetle, it'll also fit a square bat, a notchback, a slant back. It'll fit a VW thing. It'll fit a Type 1 bus. It'll fit a combi. It'll probably fit most of your dune buggies out there. My good friends at Fisher Buggies in Florida will probably help you do it too. And you can get this for just $2,000. So no matter what your tastes are in terms of electrification, if you're looking to convert a vehicle to electric, there's plenty of options, plenty of different ways to go. Be sure to head down to the comments. Tell us what your favorite classic vehicle is, the one that you'd like to see electrified, and we'll see if we can't find it. We'll do another story on that. That should be it for the vacation episodes. We'll be back in action tomorrow with the latest EV news of the week. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a minute of it. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.